Hello, and welcome to the world of home recording and music production. My name is Spencer Davis, and I shall be your guide throughout this program. The purpose of our program is to help you get the most from your home recording studio. We'll also show you how to soundproof and construct an area to record in. We'll build the various tools you'll need in the studio out of things found around the house. And now we've got all the introductions out of the way, let's get down to business, shall we? The first thing we need, of course, is the 4-track recorder. And here we have it, your basic no-frills 4-track cassette recorder. And in our case, we're going to plug this right into our stereo. Located on the front of the recorder, you'll find a series of jacks labeled line in 1 through 4. And on the back, we have lines 1 through 4 out, plus the main stereo left and right line out. The lines in 1 through 4 give you a direct path to each channel on the recorder. If you're using an electronic drum machine or a keyboard, you would probably want to use one of these inputs. On your machine, they might be labeled lines in 1 through 4. The line-out jacks, on the other hand, will give you a direct line out of whatever has been recorded on its corresponding track. This is a feature you might want to use if you happen to have a small board or an audio console. By connecting the lines out of each track on the recorder into the lines in of the corresponding channels on the recorder, you are then able to feed each channel of your audio console with the tracks recorded on your tape machine. And next we come to the jacks labeled left and right lines out. They take the stereo signal of the combined sum of all 4 tracks and send it to our monitor system. In this case, our monitor system will be a normal household stereo. In some cases, you may wish to plug microphones in inputs 1 through 4. When you see an input that looks like this, it's usually a high impedance input. I shall explain the difference between high and low impedance in the section dealing with microphones later on. And last but not least is the headphone jack. This, of course, is where you'd want to plug your headphones in. Through them, you can monitor any or all of the tracks simultaneously by adjusting this control, up or down. And now we'll quickly go over the different types of cords, plugs, and connectors you'll encounter when connecting up your system to record your music. First of all, we have the type of connector found on the back of our 4-track. These are known as RCA or phono plugs. These connectors are also found on the back of most stereos and power amps. And next we come to the 1/4-inch connector, otherwise known as the guitar cord. This type of jack is not only used for guitars, but for most electronic instruments, such as drum machines, keyboards, high-impedance microphones, and for most studio outboard effects gear, such as reverbs and digital delays. The next type of connector we have is known as a pin plug or a Sony connector, and you'll find this on smaller cassette machines such as a boombox or a Walkman. Another type of connector I'm sure you'll run into is called the Canon plug or XLR connector. This type of connector can be found on low-impedance microphones and cable, and the line-in and line-out connectors of most professional audio consoles and gear. This brings us to another type of connector known as the tiny telephone, or TT for short. Because of their smaller size, they enable the patch bay to have more room for more patch points within a confined amount of space. Another type of connector that you might run into is called the banana plug. This type of plug is used primarily when connecting your power amp and speakers. And last but not least, we come to the stereo connector. This jack enables you to get a stereo signal from just one connector. And in case you haven't noticed, this is also the jack that's right on the end of your stereo headphones. Now that we've talked about the different types of jacks and connectors, the time has come to connect the multi-track recorder to the monitors, in this case, our stereo. For that, we're going to require 2 cords, RCA to 1/4 inch.
Plug one end of these cords into the left and right lines out of your 4-track recorder. Then take the other end of the same 2 cords and plug them into either the auxiliary ins, tape monitor ins, or if all else fails, the phono inputs of the power amp. This will allow you to monitor in stereo what's been recorded on the 4-track. If you're going to be mixing onto a 2-track cassette machine or reel-to-reel tape recorder, we would take our same 2 lines out of the 4-track and plug them in here, into the jacks labeled left and right lines in. If you're using a reel-to-reel, make sure it's set on input or input monitor. In this way, you'd be sending a signal through the 2-track and into our monitors, without having to first record onto the 2-track and listening to it through playback.
If you're using a cassette player without an input feature, what you have to do is put a cassette into the cassette player, put it into record mode, put it into pause, and this way you'll be able to monitor what's happening on the 4-track. The other alternative, of course, is to use a set of headphones and go into the headphone output on the 4-track. This way, you'll be able to monitor directly.
Headphone output, headphone volume control.
Last but not least, when wiring your monitors, make sure that your speakers are correctly wired, in phase that is. That means connecting the positive to the positive and the negative to the negative. When you do that, they should sound like this.
But if you've somehow gotten the leads reversed, it would sound something like this. Can you hear the difference? It's because the speakers are working against each other. While one moves out, the other moves in. But when the speakers are wired in phase, the speakers are moving in the same direction at the same time.
By now, you should be familiar with how your tape recorder works. You should know how to wire up your stereo. You should know how to connect up your monitors. You should also be very familiar with the different types of plugs and connectors that you're going to meet in the world of audio. In the next section, we're going to talk about microphones. In this part of our program, we're going to talk about the different kind of microphones encountered in today's studios. We shall also talk about the various pickup patterns that they use. These pickup patterns are also known as polar patterns. The first pickup pattern we're going to talk about is known as omnidirectional, called Omni for short. This particular pattern is spherical in shape. It picks up sound from all directions equally, front, back, left, and right. The next type of pattern we'll talk about is the cardioid pattern. One of the reasons it's called a cardioid pattern is because of its heart-shaped pickup pattern. And as you can see, it picks up everything it hears in the front of the mic, but it starts to drop off on the sides and is negligible at the rear of the microphone. This brings us to the next pickup pattern, which is known as the hypercardioid pickup pattern. Essentially, this is the same type of pattern as the cardioid, except that this pattern is much tighter, rejecting even more on the sides and back of the microphone. A microphone with this type of pattern is known as a shotgun microphone. This is used in most television productions because of its ability to center it on a specific sound source. Another type of pattern found in this microphone is known as the bidirectional pattern or the figure-8 pattern. You can see in this graphic animation of a figure-8 pattern how it picks up sound from the front and the back of the microphone, but not on either side. All of the microphones that we'll run into in the field of recording will fall into one of two different systems, either high impedance or low impedance. In the field of professional recording, the microphones are usually low impedance. And that's because of the huge amounts of cabling that the signal has to travel through in the studio before it gets to the recorder. The low impedance system gives a minimal amount of signal noise and eliminates most extraneous noise problems from long cabling. But with the small amount of cable that the signal has to travel through in a basic 4-track, there's no real cable noise or hum problem. This type of system is called high impedance. This brings us to direct boxes and line transformers. A line transformer is used to change the impedance from high to low or vice versa. For instance, if you're using a low impedance microphone, you'll need a low to high line transformer to make it work with your recorder, because chances are the recorder has a high impedance input. A direct box is used in exactly the same way as a low to high line transformer is. For instance, if you wanted to plug a guitar or a bass directly into the board, making the instrument compatible with a low impedance system. This concludes this portion of our program. However, we will be discussing various mic techniques when we're laying down some tracks later on in the program. In this part of the program, we'll explain the functions and controls that make up a tape recorder. The tape recorder consists of two distinct parts, the transport and the electronics. The tape transport is mechanically what handles the tape. It's also where we'll find the stop, fast forward, rewind, record, and play buttons. The electronics portion of the recorder contains everything that deals with the recorded signal on tape, such as the mic line or tape input switch. This changes the input from mic to tape and vice versa. Next, we come to the sliding fader at the bottom of each channel. This is called the fader volume control. Each one of these faders controls the volume to its own channel and usually its corresponding track on the tape. At the top of each channel, you will find the VU meter. The VU meter will show you how much of a signal or level that you're sending to tape. Incidentally, VU stands for volume unit, and on our meters, these are measured in decibels. Also on the tape recorder, we have the monitor volume control. This controls the monitor volume of whatever is in any particular channel or track on the recorder. However, it doesn't control the input level of a channel. It allows you to adjust the output of a track to a comfortable listening level. Next, we come to the EQ or equalization section of the recorder. It contains the treble and bass controls for each channel. These tone controls can affect not only what's being recorded on the tape, but also what's already been recorded onto corresponding tracks onto the tape. Next in line is the track assign switch. This allows you to send the signal from an incoming channel to whatever recordable track you might want to send it to. Working our way down the recorder, we find the auxiliary send. This lets you take a line out of a particular channel and allows you to send it to whatever type of effects gear you might want to patch in. Last but not least, let's not forget about the pan pot. It allows you to position the sound of any individual track in the monitors or in the mix, left, right, center, or anywhere in between. By now, you should be familiar with all the basic functions and controls of a multi-track tape recorder, so we can now begin the recording process. If there's something you're not certain about, simply rewind and check that point again. Now that we've got our 4-track cassette recorder hooked up to our stereo or to our monitor system, there's one thing we have to do before we start recording, and that is we have to clean and demagnetize the heads of the 4-track cassette recorder.
To do that, you'll need one of these, a tape head demagnetizer. You can pick one of these up in most electronic stores. But remember one thing, before you use it, take the tape out of the tape recorder and make sure that there are no other tapes nearby, because this will erase everything it comes in contact with. To do that, we have to position the cassette recorder so we can get at the tape heads. Next, turn the demagnetizer on and slowly move in towards the first tape head. Get as close as you can without touching the head itself. Then, starting at the top, move the demagnetizer down the head and slowly pull away. Using the same motion that we initially approached it with, repeat the procedure with each head. The next thing we'll need to do is to clean the tape guides and the heads. For that, you're going to need some denatured alcohol or some head cleaner and some cotton swabs. Now we'll thoroughly clean the arrays, record and playback heads. Also, all of the tape guides of any dust or tape residue. You'll be surprised at the fidelity you get from your recorder when you clean and demagnetize it. Well, it looks like we're ready to go to the next part of our program, which will include recording basic tracks. It's at this point in the program we'll begin to lay down the basic tracks for our song. In the process, we'll be using a variety of miking and production techniques in order to achieve our goals. The first instruments that we shall be setting up for will be the drums. We'll assume that we'll have a limited number of tracks with which to record, namely one. So we'll be using one microphone. Most home studio owners won't be able to afford more than a couple of good microphones at first. So we will be using one basic type of microphone to record our tracks. And that'll be a Shure SM58. It has a great frequency response and a cardioid pickup pattern. This type of pattern will let us pick up more of the drum set and less of the room. Since the type of microphone we're using is a low impedance microphone, we're going to need a line transformer to convert the low impedance to high impedance. This way, we'll be ready to plug the microphone into channel 1 of our recorder. We will then assign that channel to track 1 of the recorder. If your recorder has a mic line switch on it, make sure that the mic line switch is in the mic position. We'll then bring that channel's fader up until we're getting a pretty good signal on the VU meter. Lastly, we'll need to bring up that channel's monitor volume so that we can hear what will be going to tape. First of all, we need to get a level on the drums. When looking for the best mic position, if we need more snare drum, then we move the microphone closer to the snare drum. If we need more bass drum, then we move the microphone closer to the bass drum. If, on the other hand, however, we need more room sound, then we'll move the microphone out a few more feet away from the drums. We'll get the sound of the drums and the room sound of the drums reflecting from the walls and the ceiling. Let's say, though, that you're getting too much of the cymbals on your drum track. Simply take some extra wide masking tape and tape down the offending cymbals until they blend in better with the overall drum sound. And now it's time to see if we can improve the overall drum sound by equalization or EQing the drum track. That would be these, the treble, mid, and bass controls located here on each channel of the recorder. Before we get too involved in EQing our drums, let me point out there's no rule of thumb with regard to EQing. It's all a matter of personal taste. So please let me impart some of my personal taste and experience with regard to this. There are 2 ways of EQing an instrument or a vocal. The first is boosting specific frequencies. The second would be subtracting specific frequencies. For instance, if I add more treble to the drums, they get brighter sounding. But another way of getting them to sound brighter is to, instead of adding more treble, subtract some of the bass or low end and increase the track's overall volume. Personally, I like to roll the low mids off the drums. It makes them sound less boxy. That was accomplished by rolling off the lower mids and boosting the highs just a little. The next instrument we'll be recording on our basic track will be the keyboards. In our case, electronic keyboards, so we can plug direct into the recorder. First of all, we'll want to take a 1/4-inch cord and plug one end into the keyboard. We'll then take the other end of our cord and plug it into an open channel on the recorder. We'll need to put the mic line tape input switch into the mic position. We'll then want to assign this channel to track 2 on the tape. And now we've checked all the levels of the instruments in the recorder, we're ready to begin recording our basic tracks. Oh, and one thing. Be sure to put a 4 count on the basic track. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible to do any overdubs because we won't know where our song started. Is everybody ready? Okay, this is going to be take 1. Ready? In this section, we're going to deal with overdubbing a bass guitar. There are 2 ways to record a bass guitar. The first way is, of course, using an amplifier. And we do this by placing the microphone up against the grill cloth for as tight a sound as possible. The other way, of course, is to record the bass direct. And this can be accomplished in the same way as the keyboard, by plugging the jack into an open channel on the recorder. Next, we'll need to assign our bass channel to track 3 on the recorder. Bring the fader up on our bass channel until we're getting a good level on that channel's VU meter. We'll then need to adjust the levels of our pre-recorded tracks and our new bass, so that we're hearing a good blend of what's already been recorded and what we're about to record. So, just to recap, we've recorded the other instruments on track 1 and 2. We're now going to record the bass on its own track, track 3. And now that we've recorded the bass onto our song, it's time to ping-pong or bounce the tracks onto the remaining unrecorded track. First of all, we'll need to put tracks 1, 2, and 3 into mix, remix, or submix, whatever the case may be. Next, we'll need to put track 4 into record and on input. This then allows us to send a mix of tracks 1, 2, and 3 to track 4. By using the fader controls located on each channel, we'll be able to get the desired balance on each track as they're combined and sent to track 4. We would then adjust the overall volume being sent to track 4 here at the master fader. Make any last-minute EQ changes to any of our tracks. Of course, EQing always for the clarity of the instruments. Next, we press record on the machine and proceed to bounce tracks 1, 2, and 3 to track 4. After we've bounced the tracks, we should go back and check our work to make sure we're satisfied with what we've got. When we're satisfied with what we've got, we can go back to the recorder and we can erase tracks 1, 2, and 3, because now the drums, the keyboard, and the bass are all on track 4. This means that 1, 2, and 3 are open to record further instruments, vocals, more keyboards, overdubs of any kind. At this point in the program, I'd like to introduce my very good friend, Joey Molland, who's going to tell you about what's to come.
Hi, we're going to get to our next overdub now, and that's acoustic guitar. Now, if we were going to do a lead acoustic guitar part, we'd put the mic about 12 to 18 inches from the front of the guitar, like so. Let's see. Something like that, and that should be okay. But if you're going to be recording a rhythm part, which is what we'll be doing, you should place the microphone between the sound hole and the bridge, somewhere between 6 and 8 inches away from the guitar. Now that we've established the position of the microphone, let's go and plug the mic into an open channel on our recorder. This time, the mic line switch should be in the mic position. We'll assign our guitar channel to track 1 on the tape. Next, we'll need to bring up our channel fader and adjust the monitor level. Seeing that our EQ has only bass and treble controls, let's back off some of the bass. What we're really after are some of the low-mid frequencies. Therefore, by lowering our bass EQ, we can get to some of these frequencies, which really cleans up the guitar sound. Because we've dumped some frequencies from the guitar, we'll need to bring up our overall level and make any last-minute changes to monitor levels. Now we're ready to do the guitar part. Coming up next, we're going to show you how to get as fast a sound as possible out of the acoustic by using a couple of simple production techniques. Well, we've recorded our first acoustic guitar part, but it doesn't sound quite thick enough or fat enough for us. And one solution for that might be to double track it. This involves re-recording the acoustic part again and then combining the 2 guitars onto 1 track. Let's try it. We'll use the same ping-pong technique that was used to bounce tracks 1, 2, and 3 to track 4. First of all, so that both of our guitar parts match up, we'll use the same microphone and mic position on the second guitar as we did in the first. We'll then need to plug our microphone into an open channel on the recorder and assign that channel to track 3 on the tape. We'll also need to put our first guitar channel into remix. This will send our first acoustic guitar over to track 3 as well as our second guitar. We'll then need to set the EQ for our new guitar, exactly the same as we did for our first guitar part, and bring up our volume on the fader of our second guitar track. Next, we'll need to bring up the level of our first guitar and match it with the level of our new guitar part. What we're doing here is combining the 2 guitar tracks down onto 1. This will give us a nice fat guitar sound. And hey, you can use this technique with a lot of other instruments. You can double track lead vocals and backups, harmony vocals, and anything else you can think of. Once we're done combining the 2 tracks, we should go back and listen. And if they sound good to us, we can go back and erase the first acoustic guitar track. This gives us an extra empty track to work with. Let's do that now. Now we can get on with the next portion of our program, and that's the overdubbing and recording of an electric guitar. The next thing we're going to do is record some electric guitar onto the song. And here are a couple of ideas for getting different types of guitar sounds. First of all, if you're looking for an open type of guitar sound, take and place the microphone a few feet away from the guitar amp. This lets us pick up some of the room noise as well as the guitar amp. But if you're looking for a tight, present sound, you'd want to put the microphone close to the amplifier, just an inch or two away from the grill cloth. If you want the guitar sound to be a little brighter, you can get more treble out of the guitar sound if you point the microphone towards the center of the speaker, specifically at the speaker coil. If you want your guitar sound to have more low end in it, take the microphone and point it more towards the edge of the speaker. But if you're looking for a really tight kind of sound, no room noise at all, you might want to try isolation. And the best ISO booth I can think of around the house would be a closet. Simply by hanging up some blankets on the walls and some egg cartons on the ceiling, you can make yourself an excellent little isolation booth, insulating unwanted sound on your recording. If, on the other hand, you're looking for a live room type of sound, you might want to consider something as obvious as the bathroom. All that tile and porcelain are quite conducive to a live sound. And it sounds good to sing in, so why shouldn't it be good to record in? Don't be afraid to experiment. Look around, find those locations in your house where you'll get the sounds that you're actually looking for. You'll be amazed at what's going on there. But right now, let's get back to recording the guitar on this song. Now that we have the microphone in position, let's plug it into an open channel on the recorder. Make sure that our mic line switch is in the mic position and that our guitar channel is assigned to track 1 and in record. Also, we'll need to get a proper level going to tape and make sure we've got enough monitor volume. Okay, we're all set. Let's do this guitar part. The next thing coming up after that will be Spencer, talking more about recording and specifically the problems in recording vocals.
At this point in the program, we'll be recording the vocals onto our song. And just as in the case of the guitar, we can use some of the same recording techniques. A good example, of course, would be isolation. Because we don't need any outside or extraneous noises on our vocal track, isolating the vocalist is of paramount importance. I can't think of a better isolation booth than the closet. Once again, by simply hanging some blankets on the wall and a few egg cartons on the ceiling, we've got ourselves a pretty dead room. If you're looking for a really live room sound, look no further than your nearest bathroom. All that tile will give you a lot of natural reverberation. And the same holds true for the vocals as it did for the guitar. That is to record in a room or an area that has those particular sound qualities that enhance the instrument, creating the proper feelings you're trying to convey in your songs. And now, let's talk about windscreens and pop filters. The purpose of a windscreen is to stop the unwanted puffs of air sometimes generated when singing. When this happens, it usually sounds like a pop or a thud and is associated with the letter P. This is one of several different types of windscreens that can be purchased in most music stores. However, with just a little effort and for under $10, which is about what we have into this here. Get a nylon stocking, an embroidery hoop, and that goes inside here like that. And we have exactly the same thing here as we have there, except that's much more expensive. But the important thing is it stops you from popping when you're singing.
And without further delay, let's get our vocal mic plugged into an open channel. We'll then put our mic line tape input switch into the mic position and assign our vocal channel to track 2 on the tape. Next, we'll make sure we're getting enough level onto tape and bring up our monitor level to match that of the rest of our tracks. At this point, we should be all set to record the vocal part. So, without further ado, and we're rolling.
As you may have heard, the song sounded fine except for the middle part. It sounded a little rough. So rather than record the whole song, we're going to employ a technique here called punching in and punching out. So I'm going to divide the song up into 3 parts. Thus, 1, 2, 3. This is going to be the first part of the song, which we know is okay. This will be the middle of the song, which we're going to re-record. We're going to mend. And this is fine here. So what we'll do is we will play the song up to here, and we'll punch in here, re-record it, and punch out right here, because we know the last part of the song is okay. So let's give it a try, shall we?
Right before we come to the part that we wish to re-record, in a section where there's no singing, we press play and record. The vocalist then sings the new middle section. Once we're done recording the vocal part, pressing the play button again will take the recorder out of record. The technique of pressing the play button to take the recorder out of record greatly reduces the number of pops, as opposed to pressing the stop button, which could increase the number of pops. It's also a good habit to get into singing or playing along with the track before you punch in. This will allow the 2 different takes to match up. Remember also, while punching in, not to change the EQ settings, move the microphone, change the instrument sound from the amplifier. Otherwise, you'll be hard-pressed to get the 2 different tracks to match up. This concludes this part of our program. Next, we'll discuss in depth the process of mixing down to 2-track. In this part of our program, we're going to be going through the process of mixing down the tracks we recorded in the previous part of our program. But first, let's define the term mixing. The mixdown, or mixing, is the process of blending and EQing all of the tracks recorded on a multitrack machine into a cohesive sound. This is also where we would add any special effects, such as delay or reverb. Once all of our tracks have been blended into a total sound, we would then send the stereo or mono output signal to a 2-track reel-to-reel or cassette machine. This would then be the master mix of the song originally recorded on the multi-track machine. The first track we're going to be working with will be the drums, bass and keyboard, track 4, the very foundation of our song. It's to this track that we're going to be blending and mixing all the other tracks. The first thing we want to do is try and improve or strengthen the track by using a little EQ. And since we've already EQ'd out all of the frequencies we didn't want when we originally recorded the instruments, we can now add some low end back into the track without making our drums sound too boxy. Next, we'll add as much high end or treble as is needed to bring out the clarity of the track, but not so much high end that the background noise becomes evident.
Now that we've EQ'd our rhythm track, let's see if there's any kind of effect we can add to it to enhance it even further. For that purpose, we're going to need some outboard effects. Also, remember, this rhythm track contains our bass, drums, and keyboards. About the only effect we can add to that without cluttering it up would be a little reverb. You may ask, how do we hook this unit up? We're going to need 2 chords.
We'll take the end of our first chord and plug it into either the auxiliary out or the line out of track 4. Plug the other end of the same chord into the jack labeled line in on the reverb unit. We'll then take our second chord and plug one end into the jack labeled line out of our reverb unit. And take the other end of the chord and plug it into the auxiliary input jack of an open channel on the recorder. By turning up the auxiliary send of track 4, we're sending a stronger signal to the reverb unit.
Now that we have our rhythm track happening, it's time to start working on track 3, our 2 acoustic guitars. But first of all, we have to decide if we need to EQ the track or not.
In this case, I think that we could add just a little bit of high end. This should give our guitars a little more clarity. If we sweep the low end, we might find a particular frequency that might help our acoustic guitar parts. At this point, it sounds like our guitar track sounds fat enough, so let's pan our guitars over to the right of the mix. And let's go to the next track on our mixdown, and that would be the electric guitar on track 1. We'll once again sweep through the frequencies of the EQ and see if we can improve the sound of our track. At the same time, taking care not to boost the same frequencies found on the other tracks. After all, there are only so many frequencies in a recording. You'll find that if 2 or more tracks have the same basic EQ settings, that they will work against each other, making the track sound muddy. But by changing the EQ settings of one of the tracks, the overall sound becomes much clearer. Because we already have our reverb unit patched into the auxiliary section of the recorder, this might be a good time to try a little reverb on the guitar. This is accomplished by turning the auxiliary send out of the guitar channel and adjusting the reverb to its optimum level. And let's put our electric guitar to the left of the mix. This will give the song a good, even balance. And now that we've got all the instrument tracks sitting where we want them to, it's time to come to the last track of our song, the vocal track. But first of all, let's EQ that track. We need to find the frequencies that will make our vocal track strong and clear without interfering with the sound of the rest of the track or making it sound unclear or muddy. So in this case, if we simply boost the highs a bit for clarity and dump some of the lows, our vocal should now have the presence it needs to stand out in the track. And I think that's got it. Now that we've probably EQ'd the vocal track, we should see if there's anything we can add to it to enhance it, to better convey the feeling of the song. I suggest for this we use a little tape delay. For this we go to a 2-track reel-to-reel tape recorder. You can get one of these fairly cheaply from a second-hand store or a pawn shop. And you might ask, how do we plug it in and make it work? Well, it's like this. The signal that we're sending into the 2-track ends up here at the record head. It's then recorded onto tape. The tape then travels to the playback head, and the delay that we hear is the time it takes our recorded signal to travel from the record head to the playback head. And yes, changing the tape speed changes the echo time. First, we take 2 chords and plug one end of our first chord into the line out or tape out jack of track 2 on the 4-track recorder. We then take the other end of our chord and plug it into the line in jack of channel 1 on the 2-track recorder. Next, take one end of our second chord and plug it into the line out or tape out of channel 1 on the 2-track. We'll then take the other end of that chord and plug it into the line-in jack of an open channel on the recorder. This gives us control of the returning echo here on the fader of our channel. We can increase or decrease the amount of echo to the mix simply by moving the fader up or down. Once we have all of our tracks EQ'd and balanced, it's time to send them to a 2-track cassette recorder or reel-to-reel. Or if you have a beta or VHS hi-fi video recorder, you can use that to record your mix onto. Generally, the quality is quite high. Hooking one up for mixing purposes is the same as any other audio recorder. Today, though, we'll be using a cassette machine, assuming we have everything properly plugged in, which, by the way, was covered earlier in our program. We can carry on to the next step in the mixdown process, and that's cleaning and demagnetizing the tape recorder. So we'll take the cassette, put it in the cassette recorder, cue it up, and we will get levels on it. Then we'll proceed with the mix here.
Baby, please
Now that we have our 2-track mix, those of you who have 4-track cassette recorders can take that same cassette, bring it over to the recorder here, put it in, and add 2 more tracks to your original mix.
We can do this because a 2-track cassette records on tracks 1 and 3 for its right and left channels, while a 4-track recorder uses all 4 tracks in the same direction.
Well, that brings us to the end of this program. We certainly hope it's helped you with your home recording studio and enabled you to get the best from it. By the way, the majority of the audio for this program was recorded on a 4-track recorder, just like this one. On behalf of the crew and myself, I'd like to wish you all the best.